We're back, folks. I'm your host, BKP, trying to get settled here in my new chair. I got a new chair. It's the Christmas chair. Hey, folks, we are your #1 online news network here in the mornings. And if you would like to ever send messages or news stories throughout anywhere in North Georgia, you can do that, 706-889-9700. And also an email, chief@fetchernews.com, and there's all the social media ways to follow us. Now, tomorrow's election day in Georgia, okay? It's just that. Whether you want it or not, it's still here, it's going. My recommendation, I wonder how many white people voted. I wonder how many black people voted. I wonder how many Hispanic, Asians. Other. Who the hell's the others? I mean, I know. I'm just joking. But by race, by gender, by age, okay. Early voters, day of voters, non-voters. I mean, it's all broke down right here. You would, if you want the best information, so far in 2018 runoff, there has been early voting closed Friday, no early voting today and tomorrow's election day, but so far in 2018 runoff, 279,755 people have voted early. At this point in the 2018 general, the final week of voting, early voting, okay, the number was 641,515. The turnout for the 2018 runoff is 56.4% lower. How do you find this? If you want, you go to georgiavotes.com. Great resources there. georgiavotes.com. It's real easy to use. Now, that being said, rural Georgia and North Georgia, you're really coming out and casting your votes. May be big for Brad Raffensperger, the Republican on the ballot for Secretary of State, and that may do very well. And also the Public Service Commissioner, Republican Chuck Eaton. Now, we'll get into that in a minute. Now, all I'm looking for is a fair fight, right? Wouldn't that all you were looking for? Now, what was the other project, Josh, that Stacey Abrams started? The New Georgia Project, right? So, folks, we've not done very much on this show concerning this, and I told you here on this day here, Monday before election, and we hope we share this with your friends. Okay, Republicans had that 255,000 or 250. We had that 250,000 buffer, okay? In Georgia, there is the David Perdue ran against Michelle Nunn, Now I want to bring a highlight up. Chuck Todd, I did not take a picture of it, but Chuck Todd is already on MSNBC, if you don't know, or NBC, Meet the Press. In Rush's words, meet the depressed, whatever. Don't want to steal that from Rush. But this past Sunday, Chuck Todd took a look at the 2020 map, the senatorial map that's up for grabs in 2020. He picked 3 senators, okay? He picked a senator in Minnesota. He picked Cory Gardner, is that his name? Senator from Colorado. And then he picked David Perdue in Georgia. He highlighted those 3 senators that there may be, that the Republicans have to defend. Pay attention to it. That's why I watch the shows. Why the hell do you watch that stuff? Because I watch the little things. There's no accidents where these people are concerned, okay? They set this up. 2020 is being set up every day. Robert Mueller, special counsel, setting up 2020. Okay, the deep state setting up 2020. setting up the Senate. So Chuck Todd has already started working on how many seats the Senate has to flip. And he did the scenario with a Democrat president. That means that would be a Democrat. They got to flip three to take, and that's the 3 he picked out. They got to flip 3 Republicans, okay, in 2020. Yes, we're talking about it. We're staying on Georgia, Josh. It's the same segment. But they got to flip 3 Republicans, okay? And they got to flip 3 Republicans to get the Senate. If the president loses and the Democrat, we have a vice president Democrat that would cast the tie vote, or 4 if Trump wins. And the 3 that they looked at, the first 3 they looked at having to defend their seat that it's going to be tough. It's not a Republican in Minnesota. That's a Democrat in Minnesota, but would be a Republican, Cory Gardner in Colorado, and David Perdue in Georgia. Now, the reason I bring that up is Stacey Abrams is not about to go home. Stacey Abrams wants to be the first something, okay? This is all there is to it. She wants to win a statewide Georgia election. She wants to be in the history books as the person that turned Georgia from purple to blue, back to blue, whatever. So when the Democrats lost in Georgia and Perdue against Michelle Nunn and so forth, the 250 gap, and she started the New Georgia Project, right? And the New Georgia Project was to find those 250,000 voters, Stacey Abrams, okay? To find them, all right? Pay attention nationally. If you're tagged in anywhere in the United States, don't leave because we're talking about Georgia and the Georgia runoff. This is big, all right? So they fell 55,000 votes short with the New Georgia Project. All they could steal, you know, like an old friend used to say, by hook or by crook, okay? They did everything they could, but they fell 55,000 short. Court challenges, all they could do. So, what about fair fight? About fair fight, we know the elections in Georgia and throughout much of our country are not fair. This is one of those, you got to pay attention. Tomorrow's election day, you got to pay attention today, okay? Put the BS of the 30-second commercial out of your brain. Put the BS that Brad Raffensperger didn't pay a tax bill for $160,000 or whatever. Stacey Abrams has not paid, you know, her taxes, okay? Forget that, okay? Raffensperger has something probably there. I don't want to go into that, but that nasty John Barrow ad that Brad Raffensperger, I'm going to tell you, I've met this man several times. I don't know him very deep past the veil. I call it past the veil of going to these campaign rallies. But I'm going to tell you this, okay? Brad Raffensperger, I went to a rally down in Pickens during the primary. And this is when Raffensperger is running against, Josh McCune, okay? He's running against, what's his name, David Belle Isles. He's got 4 or 5 in the race, whatever, okay? And I went down during the primary, the Republican primary, to Pickens at the, what's the gun place down there, Josh? Appalachian Gun and Pawn, right? Okay, I went down there. They had something down there, and Raffensperger's there. And we stood outside one-on-one away from the group, and we talked off the record. I'll never tell. But we had a, I'm going to say 15, 20-minute discussion. I told him truly how I felt about some things, and he said how he felt about some things. I tell you, I like this guy, okay? I would like to have him Secretary of State of Georgia, all right? That being said, not knowing too much past the veil of what I call, this guy is okay. Remember, get past that 1-minute commercial of he owes taxes. Really? You got a president of the United States just said, hey, maybe one day I would build a building in Russia, and everybody's going crazy. All right, so Democrats are dirty saying this tax thing. Let's get past that. Fair fight. So the new Georgia project brought in 200,000 votes. We'll call it that. It narrowed the gap by 200,000, but it didn't finish things. Got that 50 left. So Stacey Abrams has started a new group. Okay, the new group is called Fair Fight. Hey, Josh. Do me a favor. I forgot to send this. I was going to send this to you. Go to fairfight.com and get that video out of there. All right? And tell me when you got it. About our fight. Now, they called Brian Kemp Secretary. Let's see. What did they call him? What was that they called him? Secretary of Suppression. Not Secretary of State. Secretary of Suppression. All right? BS. I call BS on this. There was no voter suppression, all right? Secretary of Suppression. Now, the next Secretary of State has to not override the next Secretary of State and House, okay? The House of Representatives and the Senate, I don't know who's out there is going to do it. Somebody needs to step up and do it. Okay, but there needs to be, between the Secretary of State and the legislative body, there needs to be some things done that they can come in, let's say, and do something where these big Democrat counties have election boards that are all Democrats that mess everything up on purpose. You don't hear this in North Georgia. We know the elections in Georgia and throughout much of the country are not fair. Voters are being suppressed and disenfranchised systematically. We are fighting to change that. So that's Fair Fight. And as soon as Josh gets that, gives me the hot, you got it? All right, let's play the Fair Fight intro video for you right now.
Brazen
controversy,
unbelievable, egregious,
blatant attempt,
irregularities.
Voter suppression is alive and well.
Purging more than 1.4 million voters from the rolls.
Problems at the polls.
3 machines were sent, but 8 were supposed to be there.
Misinformation.
Delayed balloting for nearly
5 hours.
An electoral system notorious for making it harder to vote.
Today, I announce Fair Fight, an operation that will pursue accountability and integrity of our elections and protecting our democracy.
Fair Fight. Today she announces Fair Fight. And what was she able to use for that announcement? She was able to use all of the clips that were set up for her. I wonder where the money for Fair Fight is coming from. I wonder if there's any Tom Steyer, Bloomberg, Hollywood money. I wonder where some of the money may be coming from for this Fair Fight. Common Cause, a.k.a. Common Cause George Soros. Now, fairness of Georgia elections challenged by far-reaching lawsuit, okay? A sweeping lawsuit filed Tuesday in the wake of Georgia's fierce race for governor calls for a federal judge to overturn state laws that resulted in purging registrations, canceled ballots, and many other obstacles to voting. Backed by the former Democrat nominee for governor, Stacey Abrams, the lawsuit continues to fight for voting rights that formed the foundation of her campaign. Abrams isn't trying to change the result of this month's election. She lost to Republican Brian Kemp, but the upcoming legal battle could decide the rules of elections in 2020 and beyond. All right? The lawsuit filed by A new group called Fair Fight Action demands that Georgia use paper ballots to validate the accuracy of elections, stop canceling voter registration of those who haven't participated in recent elections, and guarantee enough election equipment so voters don't have to wait in line for 3 hours or more. It also seeks to weaken the state's exact match law, which stalled voter registration for some legitimate voters because they had hyphened or long names. Okay? Fair Fight. Abrams' new group, Fair Fight. Now, I will tell you this, and we're going to end with this right here. Let's go up to, here's the impression they give. And I don't like to do impressions. I'll leave that to Dana Carvey. Give me tomorrow's candidates for Secretary of State. Now, they call Brian Kemp, there you go. They call Brian Kemp, the former Secretary of State, Secretary of Suppression, okay? Now, Raffensperger there in the red tie, and John Barrow, a little light on the top there, former Congressman Barrow, is the Democrat. Closest to me is John Barrow. He is the Democrat. Brad Raffensperger is the Republican tomorrow for Secretary of State of Georgia. Now, the Secretary of State of Georgia, they have what's called a legislative liaison, all right? So the Secretary of State votes on nothing, okay? They vote on nothing. There are certain rules they can create within election law, all right? Secretary of State can create certain rules that can't supersede election law. Now, they're going to always tell you that Brian Kemp was overturned on his exact match. I think, was it 2014 or whatever, was overturned on exact match, and he had to back away from that lawsuit, all right, and just throw in the towel on it, on a federal lawsuit on exact match. But then the Georgia legislators passed law that supported exact match. So he was able, that's why the election, you kept hearing, well, he went back to it. No, he didn't go back to it. No, these people will not tell you the truth. He did not go back to exact match. The Georgia legislature made law that gave him the ability to enforce exact match. So at the time he backed away from it, as they call, is because there was a federal lawsuit and he did not have the support of law in the state of Georgia to enforce. The Secretary of State, not getting too much in the woods, you can argue with me all day long, but I have to tell you I'm correct on this. Secretary of State has the ability to run elections in a manner they choose, let's use that word, manner they choose, based on they don't violate federal or state laws, and state being more for your local, but federal or state laws. Okay? There's some latitude in the, so Secretary of State sets up the manner the elections will be run, making sure it does not violate, okay, does not violate anything federal or state. So when the exact match that you hear so much about was a federal lawsuit, Brian Kemp did not burn Georgia taxpayer funds fighting that federal lawsuit based on he did not have the backing of state law to defend on why he used exact match. So he didn't resurface that until after the legislature passed a law in Georgia. So anyhow, that being said, all right, the reason being is this federal lawsuit right here, okay, and remember this. I want you to remember this. I want you to call your friends. This is this simple in your decision to vote. Backed by former Democrat nominee for Governor Stacey Abrams, the lawsuit continues continues a fight for voting rights that form the foundation of her campaign. Abrams isn't, listen very close, Abrams isn't trying to change the result of this month's election that she lost to Republican Brian Kemp. She's not trying to do that. But the upcoming legal battle could decide the rules for the election in 2020 and beyond. So where I'm going to leave you with this is just that. Do you want John Barrow, to the Secretary of State of Georgia, to be John Barrow and defend Georgia against these federal lawsuits, or just bow down to the federal lawsuits? Because this is the game plan. Abrams is not finished, okay? Abrams is not finished. She plans to run, okay? She plans, as she backs John Barrow. You're totally wrong. And let's be clear. These are these times when you just got to be clear. And when somebody's not marketing to you, they're not marketing to you. So if you have, we're going to say, for example, 5 North Georgia white people. We'll just use that for an example. And you say, well, I don't hear any ads for John Barrow. Okay, or I don't see really anything on my radio station about John Barrow. Get around Metro Atlanta and listen to the radio stations there. And get around Metro Atlanta and listen to the radio stations there that have the ads from Stacey Abrams endorsing this man. Oh yeah, I've listened to several. Okay? You got to listen to certain stations. If you ain't picked that up yet, I can't help you. If you don't understand what I just said, I cannot bring you along. But you listen to certain radio stations in Atlanta, and you will pick up the ads that are trying to bring out the black vote for John Barrow. That's just all there is to it. So you got to pay attention to that, okay? So there's your choices tomorrow. Brad Raffensperger, the Republican candidate for Secretary of State, or John Barrow. Now the thing is John Barrow, I got to say it. I know you people sometimes you get angry with me. But the thing I like to do is bring you the flat out truth. I don't want to mix this up. John Barrow's trying to play an old Southern white Democrat. Well, he is an old Southern white Democrat, so I guess he plays the role pretty well. But he will not play the role of an old white Southern Democrat once elected to Secretary of State. So there are your choices. You understand there's a 2020. So who do you want? Who do you want as Secretary? You got to remember, Secretary of State certifies that vote. You got to remember, who do you want as Secretary of State? Remember that tomorrow when you go vote. Don't think Secretary of State, not a big deal. Well, I don't know. I actually heard somebody say, well, if I vote for John Barrow, all this other stuff won't be a problem anymore, and we can just move on past the election problems. Really? Really? So there you go. Now you have a choice also tomorrow, okay, between Chuck Eaton and Lindy Miller, okay? And I watched the debate. I know. I will probably try. I will promise that one day I will get help for these kind of things. How many out there, by a show of hands, watched the runoff debate between Lindy Miller and Chuck Eaton for Public Service Commissioner, District 3, by a show of hands? You need to, I tell you what I need, Josh. I need the cricket sound effect. You know, where you hear crickets? I did. I watched the entire debate, okay? I will give Lindy Miller this. She is the Democrat running in the race against the Republican Chuck Eaton. I will give Lindy Miller this. She said, it's time to Chuck Eaton out. Chuck Eaton out because it's Miller time. I actually like that line. It was pretty good. It's Miller time. Anyhow, these candidates will control how elections are run, how much you pay. These how much you pay for electricity. Georgia will determine Tuesday the next 2 persons in charge of overseeing state elections, okay, and how much you pay for your electricity bill. The Secretary of State and Public Service Commissioner seat is up. Chuck Eaton, I do not have time, but Lindy Miller is not got a radical. They're upset because she's running a campaign right there. She's running a campaign that says that she does not look like. Can you look at the Georgia? Can you look up the Georgia State Public Service Commission and see if there's a group picture? If you could do that really quick, Georgia State Public Service Commission, and see if there's a group picture there. Okay, it's because she says she doesn't look like, all right, forget it. I've changed my mind on it. She doesn't look like the others. It's a bunch of white guys, okay, older white guys. So she's running a commercial, and some people are giving her a hard time because she's running a commercial. The Democrat, Lindy Miller, saying, I don't look like these people here, these guys right here, and she's different. She would bring a different energy, no pun intended, to the commission. Chuck Eaton, there's something bad wrong. There's something bad wrong that Georgia Power put close to $1 million in his campaign last week. There's something bad wrong that Chuck Eaton has almost a million. Now, there's outside funds going in Lindy Miller's, okay? She's a Democrat, but there's something wrong of how bad Georgia Power wants to keep this guy, okay, in office. I'm just telling you. I want to check this text message to see if it pertains to what we're talking about this morning before I go to break. And anyhow, I'm your host, BKP. I wanted to check that right there, message. But that is your 2 choices tomorrow. You have Public Service Commissioner. All right, Chuck Eaton, put that back up. All right. Chuck Eaton, the Republican, back. Chuck Eaton, currently the incumbent Public Service Commissioner, and Lindy Miller, the Democrat. She is on the ballot. And then you have the Secretary of State, John Barrow, and the Democrat closest to me is John Barrow, and Brad Raffensperger, the one on the far end of the screen there, the Republican. I'm your host, BKB. We're going to take a break. Don't forget, all I'm ever looking for is a fair fight. A fair fight. We'll talk about that when we come back.